Hey guys, so today we're going to be talking about social work practice with groups. This is Emily speaking right now, and Saravia will be joining us later. So, what exactly is meso? Group practice, often referred to as the meso level of social work, lies in between micro and macro. Meso is not focused on working with individuals like micro or on large society-wide problems like macro. Instead, meso focuses on working with smaller groups to promote change. So the main method of this is group work, which Saravia and I are going to be talking about. And it's typically what we think of when we think of meso practice. But meso practice also could include small-scale organizational work, so working with groups through neighborhood businesses, religious centers, schools, nonprofits, and other organizations like that. It could be through an administrative or outreach position, or likely it can be just an extension of your micro practice, working to help maybe a group of your client population on a slightly larger scale. The focus is on collaboration and coordinating groups of people to meet a common goal instead of meeting needs at the individual's level. So since group work is the majority of meso work, that's what we're going to be focusing on in our presentation. So what is group work? The primary task of the worker is to balance socio-emotional needs with the accomplishment of group goals. So what does group work entail? The deliberate use of intervention strategies and group processes to accomplish goals using the value-based and ethical practice principles of the social work profession. So some values included here are solidarity and mutual aid, respect and dignity, empowerment, understanding, respect and camaraderie among people from diverse backgrounds. The ideal number of people to have in your groups is 8 to 12. Sometimes there's a screening process to select members whose needs and goals can be met best by the group. Other groups are voluntary participants, and some, like micro, are mandated participants. So there's also this concept of formed versus natural groups. So formed groups are created through outside influence and are convened for a particular purpose, such as task groups. And natural groups are created by naturally occurring events, interpersonal interaction, or even mutual needs of the individuals involved. So this would be like an open support group, which brings us to this next concept of open versus closed. So an open group would mean that anyone can join at any point, whereas closed is once the group starts, those are the members that are going to be involved, and people typically can't join in at a later date. So now let's talk about group dynamics. It's essential to understand group dynamics and be able to use them to accomplish group goals. Without a thorough understanding of group dynamics, workers are not going to be able to help members satisfy their needs or help the group accomplish its task or goals. So group workers should be familiar with 4 dimensions of group dynamics: communication and interaction patterns, the cohesion of the group and its attraction to members, social control such as norms, roles, and status, and the group culture. Communication and interaction are the foundation of group development. This can include explicit things that are said and implicit communication, which would be your nonverbal cues. Attraction is what maintains your group. So the extent to which the group meets members' needs and expectations determines the attraction of the group for its members. It's a liking to the group as a whole, and it determines how cohesive the group as a unit becomes. And group cohesion is a sense of unity and community, so that the group is seen by members as a single entity. It includes a sense of teamwork and group spirit. Some factors to promote group cohesion, because it's really important, include a high level of group interaction, identifying needs and how they can be met in group, achieving goals, groups that offer rewards, resources, or prestige for membership, non-competitive member-to-member relationships that affirm members' perceptions and points of view, and group pride. So next is social controls, and this is going to include norms, roles, and status. So there's this concept of covert and overt norms. So covert norms are hidden, they're subconscious, underlying, and overt are your obvious norms. So this would be like your established norms, like not showing up late, if that was one of your rules. And then there's also roles. So this would be your harmonizer, your gatekeeper, your aggressor, your blocker. For the sake of time, I'll just give you a couple examples. So your gatekeeper is that member that regulates the flow of communication. So they make sure that all members have a chance to express themselves. They encourage shy members to contribute their ideas, and they help limit who dominates the conversation by making sure that everyone gets a chance to speak. On the opposite end of that, your blocker is going to be the member that opposes every idea or opinion that's put forward, and yet refuses to make their own suggestions during group. So they say things like, that's not a good idea. And then of course we've got your scapegoat, who just is the person that subconsciously becomes the blunt end of the joke, and we want to work to diminish that, but it's not always a terribly bad thing. It is a bad thing, and these group norms and roles can be harmful if they are too rigid or if they foster behavior that's contrary to social work values. So factors that can change those negative communication patterns are reinforcement and cues from the leader, emotional bonds that are going to develop between your group members, the size and physical arrangements. So maybe you can try rearranging the group to kind of shake everyone up a bit and get them out of those negative patterns, and power and status in the group. So next we have group culture. So as your group develops, it's going to develop a culture derived from the environment in which it functions, as well as from the shared beliefs, customs, and values of the individual members. It's displayed by how members interact and handle conflict. These properties, all four of these, of a group, are going to change throughout the life of the group. So these aren't set in stone, and they can be changed. So now we're going to talk about group stages. So there's 3 main stages that I went ahead and put separate numbers on. The first stage is beginning, and then you have your middle and your ending. But these are also, the planning, assessment, and evaluation are important to include as well. So I'm going to talk about those too. So in your planning stage, things to keep in mind include the purpose of the group, the needs of the members, and the requirements of the task that you're seeking to accomplish. Some environmental factors to consider are the physical setting, the agency or organization that you are conducting the group through, social systems, and social environment. So in the beginning stage, this is where you're going to be doing icebreaker activities, forming the group rules, develop group goals. It's the first couple of sessions. This is where norm development, role testing, status awareness, and the expressions of difference take place. The worker should here help normalize these experiences and provide structure. It's also important to note that conflict is going to occur in a group setting, and leaders should work to help members view conflict as a natural and helpful part of group development. When there's contact, the leader should help others recognize it and seek to facilitate a positive outcome. To avoid excessive or unnecessary conflict, leaders should encourage group norms of openness and respect for others' viewpoints. So some key tasks for the leader in the beginning phase are to clarify the purpose of the group and the expectations that are held, clarify their own role as leader of the group, obtain feedback from the group members to clarify their expectations of what the group's going to look like, and outline learning materials, session plans, and housekeeping issues such as confidentiality and establishing those rules. So a little bit into your sessions, you're going to want to do an assessment. And you can assess throughout the group, but it's really important to look at it here to make sure that you are hosting a successful group. So you want to kind of just see if there's anything that you can be doing different, or if there's particular challenges that the group is facing that can be fixed to make sure that you can reach those group goals most efficiently. So next we've got the middle phase. So this is where there's increased group cohesion and a focus on task accomplishment. The worker here needs to help members focus on the purpose of the group. Some key tasks include balancing the collective needs of the group with the individual needs of the group members, detecting and challenging obstacles that are going to be blocking the group from achieving its purpose, providing group members with an opportunity for receiving or giving feedback about how the group is progressing, giving appropriate self-disclosure as the leader, acknowledging the limitations faced by group members so far in the process, and ensuring that the group is going to have enough time to achieve its goals. And then we have the ending phase, where the group has finished their work and begins to terminate contact. So factors that can influence endings are whether or not the group had an open or closed membership policy, the attraction of the group for its members, and the status of treatment group or task groups if they were successful in completing their goals. To facilitate successful endings, the workers should help members review and evaluate their work together by highlighting accomplishments and pointing out areas for future work. They should also work to reduce group attraction in the meetings leading up to the ending and promote the independent functioning of individual members, as well as discuss and help members deal with their feelings about the group ending. It's also important to identify future resources and supports for the group members as they go on. So this last point, evaluation, this is something that you can do at the end of your group, but it's really helpful, and I'm going to tell you why. Evaluations can demonstrate the usefulness of a specific group or group work method to an agency, a funding source, or society as a whole. They can satisfy workers' curiosity and professional concerns about the effects of maybe an intervention that they used while working with the group. They also provide information to help workers improve their leadership skills in group work, which brings us to the topic of leadership. So whenever you're leading a group, you can either choose to lead it by yourself or have a co-leader. And some benefits of co-leading is that they can help set limits and structure in the group experience. But some disadvantages are that it can be more expensive, there's a need to coordinate planning between meetings, and conflict between leaders can really negatively affect your group outcome. Some leadership styles are laissez-faire, which would be a hands-off, kind of passive style. Autocratic, in which the leader is going to dictate your policies and procedures, decide on the goals that are being achieved, and doesn't really reach for much input from members. And then the last one is democratic. And so this would include distribution of responsibility, empowering group members, and helping in group decision making instead of making group decisions. And this is the preferred style of leadership. Some sharing styles when you're doing groups are Maypole. So this is where the group leader is leading the group and they're kind of like the star of the show. And then we have round robin. So this is where people go around the room taking turns speaking. And then the hot seat. So this is where the group leader is speaking to one particular group member at a time. And then free floating. And this is where the group leader is going to facilitate the conversation, but still allow the group to talk amongst themselves. And it includes a lot of member-to-member interaction. And the most effective sharing style, depending on what you're doing, but highly the most effective one is this last free-floating style because it has a group-centered interaction pattern versus a leader-centered interaction pattern. So some models used in doing groups is the social goals model. So here is where you're seeking to raise social consciousness, social responsibility, informed citizenship, and to inform political and social action. So this was used in like settlement houses, and it's used a lot in neighborhood centers. Here the group worker is a role model to participants. So an example would be like a YMCA group. Next we have the remedial model, where the focus is restoring or rehabilitating people by helping change their behavior. And so you're going to see this most often in group therapy. Next, we have the reciprocal or interactional model. And this is where the worker is the mediator and resource person for a mutual aid group. So there's more of that leveled responsibility throughout the group. So this would look like maybe your support group. So some positive facilitation skills, because it's really important, include attending skills, which is going to be like nonverbal attitude towards the group members. Expressive skills, promoting openness or using empathy. Responding skills, so redirecting, using reflective listening. Focusing skills, knowing how to elaborate on what group members have said, repeating, and keeping the group on track. Involving group members, making group processes explicit versus implicit, and clarifying content. So we're going to link a video about the best and worst practices of facilitators to talk a little bit more about that, just because I think it's really helpful. And note the video is for business meetings, but it can still be very applicable to running a social work group meeting. So thank you guys so much for listening.